The movie opens with a man named Chris sitting alone in a restaurant. From the look on his face, it's obvious he's waiting for something. Every now and then, Chris glances at his watch to check the time, then looks toward the entrance like he's sure someone is going to show up. But after a while, no one comes. Without much reaction, Chris stands up and leaves just like that. Chris lives in Las Vegas. To survive, he works as a stage magician under the name Frank Cadillac.
Welcome to beautiful downtown Las Vegas.
Chris performs at a small show with only a small audience. On stage, he tries several prediction tricks, but the audience's response is pretty average, not really impressed. Feeling like he needs to show something more, Chris invites a young woman from the audience to take part in his trick.
Would you be kind enough to join?
This a joke?
Chris predicts that the woman's necklace will fall into her drink, and sure enough, it happens exactly the way he said it would. The audience immediately applauds, thinking it's just another clean magic trick. What Chris doesn't know is that 2 FBI agents are watching him from the audience. They don't see this as just a magic act. Chris actually has an unusual ability. He can see his own future, but only up to 2 minutes ahead. It's a skill he's been using to survive. Since the money he earns from performing isn't enough, Chris often spends time at casinos.
Anyway, Wednesday night at the back, and only within 2 minutes.
But Chris doesn't play like other gamblers. He always places small bets and only wins enough to get by. Chris intentionally avoids big wins so he won't attract attention. Even so, on that day, his behavior still seems suspicious. The casino security team, led by Roybal, along with his partner Davis, starts watching him through the CCTV cameras. They try to figure out whether Chris is cheating. Because something feels off, Roybal eventually orders his team to capture Chris. But Chris already knows what's about to happen. He leaves the gaming table and walks to the cashier to cash in his chips. While standing there, Chris once again sees 2 minutes into the future. In his vision, a man suddenly pulls out a gun, robs the cashier, shoots 2 people, then escapes with the money. As soon as the vision ends, the real situation starts unfolding the exact same way. The man actually appears. But before he can raise his gun, Chris quickly moves, tackles him, and grabs the pistol from his hand. The problem is, when the security officers arrive with their weapons raised, they see Chris holding the gun. Without knowing what really happened, they immediately assume Chris is the criminal. Chris realizes he won't be able to explain the situation. With no other choice, he immediately runs away. The entire casino security team starts chasing him, but with his ability to see a few seconds ahead, Chris can predict their movements. He avoids every guard perfectly, even while Davis keeps updating Chris's location through the surveillance system. In the middle of his escape, Chris quickly runs into a restroom. Inside, he hurriedly changes his clothes, then comes back out with a completely different appearance, trying to disguise himself so he won't be recognized. Meanwhile, Davis keeps feeding information to the security team, but by the time they move in, Chris is already heading for the exit. Chris manages to get out of the building, steals a car, and immediately speeds off. The situation quickly turns into a chase. Roybal immediately contacts the Las Vegas police, and within a short time, the city streets are filled with patrol cars chasing Chris. As he approaches a railroad crossing, Chris uses his ability to see a few minutes into the future. He sees the worst possible outcome. His car slows down and gets slammed by a fast-moving train. As soon as the vision ends, Chris immediately makes a different decision. Instead of braking, he floors the gas pedal and speeds across the tracks just seconds before the train passes. The police have no choice but to stop, while Chris successfully escapes the pursuit. On the other side, FBI agent Callie Ferris is showing casino footage to her superior. She has been watching Chris for a long time and is convinced that his ability is not just an ordinary magic trick. According to her, Chris can actually see the future. Her superior doesn't immediately believe her, especially because the situation is already critical. A group of terrorists from Europe has just stolen a nuclear weapon from Russia and plans to detonate it in Los Angeles. All agents are focused on that case, but Callie keeps insisting. She believes that if they can find Chris, his ability could help track the nuclear device. After thinking it over, her superior finally gives her a chance, but only 5 days to prove everything. Callie immediately moves quickly. She tells her assistant, Kavanaugh, to meet with Roybal. Kavanaugh goes to the casino, shows his badge, then brings Roybal to the FBI Mobile Command Center. There, Callie starts questioning Roybal about Chris. Roybal explains that at first they only suspected Chris of cheating at the casino. Then, Callie shows a photo of Chris staring directly at the surveillance camera. Callie asks what they were talking about at that moment. Roybal finally admits something strange. At the time, Roybal was just about to order Chris's arrest, but Chris suddenly looked toward the camera as if he knew what they were planning. From there, Callie starts putting everything together. Once she feels satisfied, Callie thanks Roybal and lets him go. Outside, Kavanaugh briefly warns Roybal not to ever talk about Chris's identity to anyone. Back inside, Callie and her team analyze all the data they have. They finally conclude that Chris really can see the future, with a range of around 1.5 to 2 minutes. Not long after, Kavanaugh returns with new information. The police have managed to track the location of the stolen car Chris used.
Seems too long, I can't see that far.
Meanwhile, Chris has already gone to the house of an old friend named Irv. Chris goes there to hide for a while. As soon as he sees the car Chris brought, Irv immediately becomes suspicious and asks where it came from. Chris casually admits that he stole it. Irv instantly gets annoyed. He scolds Chris for continuing to live like that, always running and hiding. According to him, a life like that will never end well. Irv also brings up something else that has been the reason Chris keeps returning to the restaurant.
I'm not going anywhere until
I forget this girl.
Irv tells Chris to forget about the woman who keeps appearing in his visions. Chris explains why he still goes to that restaurant every day. In his visions, he knows the woman will come, but he doesn't know the exact day. The only thing Chris knows is the time, around 9:08, because he once saw the clock in his vision. The problem is, his visions are often unclear, and sometimes he doesn't even know the current time. That's why he goes to the restaurant twice a day, hoping he won't miss that moment. For Chris, the woman is not just an ordinary person. When he's with her in his visions, Chris can see further beyond the 2-minute limit that has always held him back. It's something Chris has never experienced before. In his mind, that can only mean one thing: the woman might be his true love. Irv tries to bring him back to reality, saying it's too risky to base his life on something that might never happen. Chris goes quiet. Suddenly, his expression turns serious. He tells Irv that someone is coming there, a woman undercover. A police officer. Irv immediately panics and tells Chris to run as fast as possible, but Chris chooses to stay where he is instead. A few moments later, Callie enters Irv's house and immediately asks to speak privately with Chris. The atmosphere instantly becomes tense, but Chris stays relaxed.
Can we speak privately?
It's okay, Irv.
Callie starts steering the conversation toward the main topic, briefly bringing up Chris's ability to see the future. Chris pretends not to understand and jokes around like Callie is only talking about his magic tricks. Chris even says maybe Callie has seen one of his shows before.
Yeah, I do.
Callie isn't interested in the small talk. She immediately explains the real situation. A nuclear device has been stolen and is being smuggled into the United States. The goal is clear: to detonate it. Callie wants Chris to help find the device using his ability. Chris immediately refuses. Without hesitation, Chris says he doesn't want to get involved with the government. In his mind, they would just use him and then lock him up once they're done. Callie tries another approach, reminding him that they have footage of Chris holding a gun at the casino, but Chris still doesn't budge. Chris refuses again.
Try to help. In the full sense of the word, since I was 3. So please, leave me alone.
Suddenly, the situation changes drastically. Armed FBI agents storm in and surround the place. Then, everything stops, and time seems to rewind. It turns out that was only one of the possibilities Chris saw. With that information, Chris immediately moves fast and escapes through the back door before everything actually happens. A few moments later, Callie enters the same room, but the only person she finds is Irv casually playing pool. From that, Callie realizes she was only seconds away from meeting Chris. Somewhere else, Roybal is walking toward his car in the parking area. Suddenly, a man and a woman approach him, claiming to be from the gambling commission. They start asking about Chris Johnson. At first, Roybal tries to avoid the questions, pretending he doesn't know who that is, but the situation suddenly turns brutal. The woman shoots him in the knee without hesitation. As Roy falls to the ground in pain, the man pulls out a knife and forces him to talk. The next day, Chris returns to the same place as before, sitting in the same restaurant, sipping his drink while constantly checking his watch. This time, Chris is truly waiting for the moment that has appeared so many times in his visions. And finally, it happens. A woman walks into the restaurant. Her name is Liz. Liz walks past Chris, who immediately looks nervous, then sits at a nearby table. Chris starts testing different future possibilities in his head, searching for the best way to approach Liz.
Hello. You're alone too.
Actually, I do.
But one by one, the scenarios fail. In one possibility, Liz's ex-boyfriend, Kendall, shows up. Kendall immediately demands an explanation for why Liz has been avoiding him.
Come on, all right? I had an off day. The dry cleaner, all I am
The situation heats up. Kendall becomes aggressive, grabs Liz's arm, and refuses to let go, even though Liz clearly rejects him. Chris steps in and tells Kendall to back off. Kendall instantly gets angry and tries to throw a punch, but Chris easily dodges every attack. Without even looking like he's trying hard, Chris manages to take Kendall down while calmly talking to Liz. Chris forces Kendall to pay for Liz's meal, then does a small coin trick to lighten the mood. But the result is still the same. Liz isn't impressed and leaves just like that. The scenario fails. Time seems to reset again. This time, Chris chooses a different approach. Chris lets Kendall hit him, even though he already knows it's going to happen. Liz's reaction immediately changes. Liz gets angry at Kendall and tells him to leave. Liz stays there to help Chris. From there, the conversation starts flowing. Chris says his car was stolen and that he's trying to get to Flagstaff. Liz is surprised because she's heading there too. Liz teaches at a school there. Seeing Chris's condition, Liz feels bad for him and offers him a ride. In a casual tone, Liz even jokes that Chris doesn't look like a dangerous person.
No. It's because the first psycho...
Not long after that, Chris and Liz finally begin traveling together for real. The atmosphere in the car is a little awkward at first, but Chris tries to lighten the mood. Chris says that the fact they met at the same restaurant at the same time and are now heading in the same direction can't just be a coincidence. To Chris, it feels like fate.
It would be nice.
Liz immediately rejects that idea. Liz says she doesn't believe in fate. According to her, life is more interesting when it's unpredictable. On the other side, Callie and Kavanaugh keep moving. They track down the restaurant Chris usually visits, then question the owner. From there, they get important information. Chris apparently comes to that place every day and almost always leaves exactly at 8-9, but that day was different. The restaurant owner says Chris met a woman there and they overheard them talking about going to Flagstaff.
Did you notice what kind of car he was...
As soon as they leave the place, Callie immediately orders Kavanaugh to gather traffic camera footage around the area, trying to trace where Chris went. But Kavanaugh brings much more serious news. Roybal is found dead in the parking lot. The condition of his body is horrifying. His throat was slashed and his knee was shot. Callie immediately connects everything. This is not a coincidence. Callie is convinced that the terrorists who stole the nuclear device are making their move, and they are trying to eliminate Chris before he can interfere with their plans. Meanwhile, Chris and Liz arrive at a Native American settlement near the Grand Canyon. That's where Liz works part-time as a teacher. As they walk toward the village, Chris mentions that he wants to meet the local shaman. Liz doesn't really take it seriously, then pulls out a small gift. Liz says it's for one of her students' birthdays. As soon as the children see Liz arrive, they immediately run toward her and hug her excitedly. Liz sits with them, jokes around, and even learns a few words from their native language. One of the kids suddenly asks if Chris is Liz's boyfriend, while pointing at Chris, who has been staring at Liz with admiration the whole time. Liz suddenly realizes it and gets a little awkward. Chris then walks over and entertains the kids with a simple magic trick.
Hold it really tight. It's magic.
The kids instantly love it, and this time, Liz also looks genuinely impressed. After leaving the place, Liz gets curious and asks where Chris learned magic. Chris explains that he performs in Las Vegas under the stage name Frank Cadillac. He got the name from two things he likes: Frankenstein and Cadillac cars.
Well, I have a small... Frank Cadillac is my stage name. Frankenstein and Cadillacs.
Their journey continues, but suddenly, heavy rain starts pouring down. The atmosphere becomes calmer. Liz, exhausted, eventually falls asleep, even unknowingly, leaning on Chris's shoulder while he drives. When Liz wakes up, she immediately apologizes. She also comments on how the rain is getting heavier.
Okay.
Did I drool?
Not long after that, they reach a road that has been closed because of construction. The workers explain that flooding has damaged the road, so it can't be passed. With no other choice, they finally decide to stay at a nearby motel. Meanwhile, at the FBI office, Callie is practicing at the shooting range when Kavanaugh arrives with the latest update. After analyzing the traffic camera footage, they finally manage to clearly identify Chris.
You were right about the traffic cam.
By zooming in on the camera footage, they also manage to capture the license plate number of Liz's vehicle. From there, they immediately request a vehicle trace to find Chris's current location. Back at the motel, the atmosphere starts to calm down. Chris helps Liz into the room and makes sure she can rest comfortably. Chris even lights the fireplace to make the room feel warm. Liz notices that the room only has one bed. Chris immediately reassures her, saying he can just sleep in the car. Liz looks uncomfortable about it, but eventually takes a blanket and gives it to Chris. They both say good night before separating.
Good night.
Good night.
That night, Liz glances out the window. She sees Chris actually sleeping inside the car, alone in the cold air. From there, she starts feeling guilty. Somewhere else, the situation is much darker. At a harbor, the terrorists are unloading their supplies. Among all of it is the nuclear device they stole, Mayus. They begin assembling it, making sure everything works properly. The people who previously killed Roybal report the latest developments to their leader.
He said they haven't found him.
It makes no difference. And that man wasting our time looking for some authorities that are... Do it now.
Meanwhile, at FBI headquarters, Kavanaugh tells Callie that they finally managed to track Chris and Liz to a motel in Flagstaff. The information came from an Arizona Department of Transportation officer who still remembered the car they were using. Before they can make a move, Callie is called into an emergency meeting. There, Director Wisdom announces that the highest-level nuclear alert has been issued. Wisdom is clearly unhappy with his team's progress and stresses that their time is extremely limited. The bomb could go off at any moment. Callie immediately takes the opportunity. She asks for all available resources to be focused on capturing Chris Johnson. According to her, Chris is the key to finding the bomb before it's too late. The request is eventually approved. The FBI begins deploying everything they have. Without them realizing it, the terrorists are monitoring everything. They have even placed a spy in an apartment directly facing Callie's office after killing the original resident. Their leader, Smith, orders his men to follow the FBI team's movements. Smith is convinced it will lead them straight to Chris.
Ok, je suis sur le chemin.
Back at the motel, the atmosphere becomes more personal. Liz walks out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her body. Chris can't hide his reaction when he sees her. Chris tries to lighten the mood with sweet words, quoting an Italian painter to describe Liz's beauty.
Define beauty.
Then Chris performs a small magic trick, turning a piece of paper into a rose and gives it to Liz. The moment feels warm, and eventually they grow closer to each other.
Yes.
On the other side, Callie has already arrived in Flagstaff by helicopter. Her team immediately reports their position and confirms that the motel where Chris is staying is already under surveillance. Callie orders coordination with the local police to lock down the area. Callie also informs her team about the body found in the apartment facing her office, a sign that the situation is becoming even more serious. Meanwhile, inside the motel, Chris and Liz peacefully enjoy their time together. As they lie down together, Liz slowly admits something. Maybe, according to her, fate really does exist. Outside, Callie and Kavanaugh observe the motel from a distance using binoculars. They see Liz leave the room and decide to intercept her. Callie intentionally waits for a few moments, creating enough time so Chris won't immediately realize what's happening. After that, they approach Liz. Callie shows her identification and asks Liz to get into the car. Inside the car, they show the casino footage, with Chris seen holding a gun. Callie describes Chris as a dangerous person, someone who might only be using Liz to escape from law enforcement. Liz looks confused and shaken. It's hard for her to immediately believe it. Kavanaugh then asks for her help. He gives Liz a bottle of pills and tells her to slip one into Chris's drink. The pill will make Chris unconscious so they can capture him without resistance. But there's one condition. Liz has to wait 2 minutes after Chris leaves the room. Under pressure, Liz finally agrees and takes the pill.
I think you'd be eager to help us.
Not far from there, the terrorists secretly watch everything and continue reporting the developments to their leader. Liz returns to the motel room, trying to act normal. Liz greets Chris like usual and even gives him clothes she just bought for him. Chris accepts them with a smile and thanks her without the slightest suspicion. After that, Chris starts feeling that something is off. He looks at Liz and quietly asks if everything is okay. Liz immediately brushes it off, trying to act normal. She suggests that Chris take a shower first while she prepares breakfast. As Chris goes into the bathroom, Liz looks nervous. She keeps glancing at her watch, waiting for the right moment to slip the pill into Chris's drink. On the other side, inside the surveillance van, Callie is doing the same thing. Callie watches the clock, ready to give the order at any moment. Not far from there, the terrorists are also on standby. Their leader and several of his men are positioned around the area, and a sniper already has the motel in his sights. 2 minutes pass. Liz finally slips the pill into Chris's drink. When Chris comes out of the bathroom, Liz immediately hands him the drink. But right before Chris can take a sip, Liz can't hold it in anymore. Liz breaks down crying and stops him. Liz hugs Chris and finally tells him the truth. Liz explains everything Callie and Kavanaugh said about him. With a trembling voice, Liz asks if all of it is true. Chris doesn't answer right away.
Is it true?
Instead, Chris turns on the TV and raises the volume, making sure their conversation can't be heard by the FBI if they are listening in. Calmly, Chris asks how long the pill's effect lasts. After Liz answers, Chris quietly switches the glasses, then walks out of the room carrying the drink. From the surveillance van, Callie watches in confusion. Chris's movements seem unusual. Meanwhile, the sniper already has him in his sights, but can't find a clear shot. Chris goes back into the room and calms Liz down. Chris says that not everything the FBI said about him is true. To prove it, Chris starts showing her something.
It happened. It just hadn't happened yet.
Chris predicts every line that appears on the TV before it is spoken. Chris keeps changing channels, and every single time he is right.
Lost in the woods if you never go into the woods.
The woods, if you never go into the woods.
Liz is clearly shocked. She doesn't understand how Chris can do that. Chris finally tells her the truth. Chris explains that he really does have the ability to see the future, but only about 2 minutes ahead, and only when it directly involves him. Then Chris reveals something even stranger. When it involves Liz, that limit seems to disappear. Chris can see much further into the future. Chris says that's the reason he kept searching for Liz. Not just because of coincidence, but because Chris himself doesn't understand why Liz is different. When Liz asks why the FBI is chasing him, Chris explains that they believe his ability can be used for national interests. Chris refused because his ability is limited, but when he's with Liz, everything changes, and the FBI still doesn't know that.
I think
Understand if
I can only give him a 2-minute.
Chris then hands Liz an envelope full of money. Chris tells her to set her watch 7 minutes ahead. On a piece of paper, Chris writes instructions and asks Liz to follow them exactly 45 seconds after he leaves. He promises that no matter how long it takes, Chris will find Liz again. After that, Chris leaves. Outside, Callie starts feeling that something is wrong. Callie gets out of the van and raises her binoculars. That's when Callie sees Chris already outside, staring directly at her. Chris intends to escape toward the cliff. Callie immediately orders all agents to chase him and capture him alive. Following Chris's instructions, Liz starts the car and drives it down the slope. The car crashes into a water tower, causing it to collapse. Wood, debris, and heavy objects begin rolling downhill, creating chaos in the agent's path. In the middle of the escape, the terrorist sniper finally fires a shot, but Chris has already seen it beforehand. Chris dodges at the very last second. Behind him, wood and debris keep rolling downhill, blocking the agent's pursuit. Chris has to calculate every step perfectly, so he won't get crushed. With the ability he has, Chris manages to get through all of it and reach the bottom of the slope. There, Callie is already waiting for him with her gun aimed at him. At that moment, huge logs are still rolling down toward them. Callie realizes the only way to stop Chris is to make him stop on his own. Callie deliberately stays where she is, as if she's ready to be crushed. Chris can't let that happen. He immediately runs toward Callie and pulls her away just before the debris crashes down. As a result, both of them become trapped in the middle of the wreckage. The other agents quickly arrive and surround them. Callie immediately orders them to arrest Chris.
Let's get him out of here.
From a distance, Smith and his men watch everything. Calmly, Smith picks up the phone and gives a new order. The next target is Liz. They are going to kidnap her and use her as bait. On the other side, Chris is taken to FBI headquarters. He is seated in a chair and tied down, and his eyelids are even held open with a special device so he can't blink or close his eyes. All of this is done to keep him focused on using his ability. Callie briefly thanks Chris for saving her earlier. After that, Callie turns on the television. The plan is simple. Chris is told to watch the live broadcast and use his ability to see ahead, trying to figure out when and where the nuclear bomb will be detonated. As Chris starts concentrating, he is immediately pulled into a vision of the future. In a news broadcast taking place a few hours ahead, a woman is seen tied up with explosives, sitting in a wheelchair on top of a parking garage. The moment Chris realizes who the woman is, he is immediately shaken. It's Liz.
And when police received it tonight, there's no
Chris sees the bomb squad carefully approaching, trying to save Liz, but before they can do much, the terrorists detonate the bomb. Liz dies instantly. Chris immediately snaps out of the vision in panic. Callie quickly asks what he saw, but Chris refuses to tell her. Instead, Chris says he can help better if he's not in that room. Hesitantly, Callie finally agrees. Chris is moved to a temporary holding cell. Inside the cell, Chris asks for a cigarette. When the guards let their guard down, Chris immediately makes his move. With his ability to read a few seconds into the future, Chris can anticipate all of their movements. In a short time, Chris takes down the guards and escapes from the cell. The alarms immediately go off. The entire building goes into lockdown. Callie and her team immediately chase after Chris as he runs through the facility hallways. From above, helicopters also track his movements. Chris heads toward one place, the parking garage he saw in his vision. Chris manages to get inside and immediately heads up to the rooftop. Callie decides to chase him alone, telling the rest of the team to stay behind. With a gun in hand, Callie goes upstairs and finds Chris standing in the exact place he already recognized. Chris stands a short distance away from the spot where Liz will die. Callie approaches him and demands an explanation. This time, Chris finally tells the truth. Chris says that within the next 2 hours, Liz will be killed in that place. Callie immediately offers a deal. She will help save Liz, but Chris has to help find the bomb. Chris agrees.
They're using Liz as bait.
I know.
I help you, you help me.
They quickly come up with a plan. Chris is convinced that the terrorists are using a sniper as part of their strategy. Callie then orders all communication signals in the area to be cut off. The goal is to prevent the sniper from communicating and force him to reveal his position. Chris then walks into the open area on top of the parking garage, becoming bait. As soon as Chris reaches the middle, the sniper immediately fires. Chris dodges the bullet at the last second, then drops to the ground, pretending to be hit. The sniper tries to contact his boss, but fails because the signals have already been shut down. From the sound of the gunshot, the FBI immediately detects his position and takes care of him. Chris gets back up without a scratch. Callie walks over, and Chris admits one thing that makes the situation even worse. In every possibility he has seen, Liz always ends up dead. Callie refuses to give up. She suggests another approach, saving Liz before she is taken to the parking garage. Chris tries looking further into the future. This time, Chris focuses on the moments before the incident. From there, Chris manages to see the vehicle that will be used to move Liz, even remembering its license plate number. He immediately gives the information to Callie, who quickly orders a trace on it. Meanwhile, Liz has already been strapped with explosives and forced into a van. The vehicle prepares to leave the harbor, taking Liz farther and farther out of reach. At that point, Chris starts explaining to the FBI team what steps they need to take next.
To the entrance. Quiet and do exactly what before they get through the gate.
Johnson's call on his.
A few moments later, the raid operation finally begins. As the van carrying Liz tries to leave the harbor, while Smith prepares to escape by helicopter, the FBI storms in with armored vehicles and air support. Gunfire erupts everywhere. The situation becomes chaotic, forcing Smith and his men to split up and look for cover. Following Chris's directions, Callie aims at the fuel barrels around the area. The shot hits perfectly. An explosion erupts and slams into the van, causing it to flip over and lose control. In the middle of the chaos, Liz manages to free herself and runs toward a nearby warehouse. Liz hides among stacks of cargo, trying to stay away from the pursuit. Chris leads the FBI team toward Liz's location. Using his ability, Chris keeps warning them about enemy movements a few seconds before they happen. The agents are able to avoid attacks much more easily. Inside the warehouse, Liz tries to remove the bomb vest attached to her body, but fails. As Liz moves deeper inside, Smith appears and immediately takes her hostage. With the rest of his men, Smith tries to escape while using Liz as a shield, his hand gripping the bomb trigger. Chris and the FBI team continue chasing them all the way to a massive oil tanker.
Stop.
As they retreat, the terrorists leave traps behind. They place motion-sensitive explosives throughout different parts of the ship to slow down the pursuit. Chris can see the explosions a few seconds before they happen. Chris gives warnings just in time, allowing the team to defuse or avoid them. Chris keeps reading the situation ahead, guiding the team through every trap. In one corner, a terrorist hides and prepares an ambush. Chris immediately sees that possibility, then reveals the exact position before the attack happens. The FBI agents quickly move in and take down the shooter before he can fire. To speed up the search, the team decides to split up inside the ship. Chris pushes his ability even further. Chris imagines multiple future possibilities at once, like searching through many paths at the same time. Among all those possibilities, Chris finally finds one important point. Smith is seen trying to escape with Liz toward the area near the engine room. On the upper deck of the ship, the situation suddenly turns chaotic. One of the terrorists unexpectedly appears and immediately opens fire on Callie's team. In an instant, Kavanaugh is shot and falls down. Callie immediately fires back and kills the attacker, but it's already too late. Kavanaugh dies on the spot. Even though she is clearly shaken, Callie doesn't stop. She stays focused on the mission. The team regroups, and Chris immediately leads them to Smith's location. When they finally meet, Callie orders Smith to release Liz, but Smith doesn't move. Instead, Smith keeps Liz in front of him as a shield while warning Chris not to come any closer. Chris immediately processes different possibilities in his head. Out of all the future scenarios, Chris searches for the only path where Liz survives. Chris briefly asks Callie how accurate her shooting is. Then Chris steps forward.
I'll take my chance.
Smith immediately opens fire, but Chris has already anticipated everything. Chris dodges every bullet with precise movements until Smith's gun finally runs out of ammo. In panic, Smith tries to press the bomb trigger, but before he can do it, Callie shoots his hand, causing the device to fly out of his grip. Without hesitation, Callie fires again and ends Smith's life. Liz is finally safe. The team quickly removes the bomb vest from her body, but Callie immediately reminds everyone that it's not over yet. The nuclear device still hasn't been found, and it has most likely already been activated somewhere else. Chris is then brought to a seismograph machine, which is used to help detect the location of an explosion. As Chris stares at the machine and tries to look into the future, his expression changes. Chris realizes something even worse. Liz was only a distraction the whole time. While everyone was focused on saving her, the real bomb had already been planted somewhere else. In his vision, the shockwave of the explosion tears through the city, destroying everything and killing millions of people. Then, everything stops. Time starts rewinding again. It is revealed that everything that just happened was only one possible future seen by Chris. In reality, Chris is still at the motel, lying beside Liz. With that understanding, Chris finally makes a decision. Chris personally contacts Callie. Chris says he is ready to fully cooperate in finding the bomb, but Chris has one condition. Liz must be completely kept away from all of this. Callie agrees to the request and says she is on her way there. Chris then wakes Liz up and tells her that he has to leave. Liz asks if Chris will come back. Chris answers yes. Whether it takes a week or a month, Chris will find Liz again. Chris only asks for one thing. Liz has to wait for him. Liz nods. A few moments later, Chris is outside the motel when Callie arrives. Callie asks if Chris is ready. Chris simply nods, gets into the car, and leaves with Callie towards something they still do not know.